Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I have 6 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the first virtual meetup for the 2024 year here for Chapter Supporting Chapter. Back in action, we left the conversation in NOLA. Excited to get started in an official task force movement here from what started as a grassroots movement of chapter leaders wanting to support other chapters, wanting to help build stronger chapters together. So I thank Chef Derek and Chef Gabe for joining me tonight and hosting all of you. And thank you for joining us. This is being recorded. As we know, not everybody can make one single time, and we certainly want to be able to share that with everyone else. You are all muted upon entry, and that is purposeful. That way we can start the conversation, and towards the end, we certainly will enable the unmute function so that you all can engage with one another. But for now, we do have the chat open. Please introduce yourself, connect with others, ask your questions, and again, realize that we're going to circle back towards the end and open it up for the conversation to continue more. Let's start off by introducing our guest speakers tonight. Chefs, if you want to introduce yourself, we'll start with Chef Derek.
Hello, everyone. My name is Derek Ivancic. I am currently the chapter president for the Cleveland Akron Canton chapter. I just started my second term, so I'm going into my beginning of my third year. I was a sergeant at arms before, and I've been a member of the chapter for about 10 years.
Awesome. Thank you, Chef. And Chef Gabe.
Yes, I am the president of the ACF Chefs of Northwest Indiana, and just been the president for just about a year now. Previous to that, I was vice president. I am the current executive chef and director of the Hospitality and Nutrition Services at Hartsfield Village, which is a continuing care retirement community under the umbrella of community healthcare system. So we're excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. And I should have introduced myself. Autumn Patty. I am the task force chair, proudly the president of the ACF Harrisburg chapter for 4 years now, just about coming up on 4 years. I started in Orlando, Florida, joining this group to meet others and really make those connections. I was excited to be a part the last 2 years, and again, forging forward with a great team. Also on our task force is Dave Durant from Southwest Florida. And then we also have Lenny Rubin from the Phoenix chapter in Arizona, who most of you hopefully will be seeing as we go to the national convention. All about us, you can read on our chapter supporting chapter page that's on the ACF Chefs table. There is a quarterly newsletter that is coming out. Most of you hopefully have received it via email as well, but there is information about all of us. Very important, there's a link on there that you can complete a form. Let us know what you're great at. Let us know what you're looking for help with. Just let us know some connection pieces and how to connect with us more as well. Okay? So let's go ahead and jump right into it. We were having a discussion and thought, where's a great place to start? And how about our meetups? How do we do our meetups? And just in a quick conversation, we realized 3 completely different chapters. And some things we're successful with, some things we're not. So just to jump right into the conversation, I think we all agreed we have monthly meetings. We have our monthly meetups. We have changed the lingo a little bit. We've learned about the education to include, we've learned a lot over the last couple of years with the chapter supporting chapters. So to jump in there, I'm wondering what other types of meetups do you have rather than just that monthly meetups that we know that we all do have. So let's start with you, Chef Gabe. Anything else that you do as a chapter?
Actually, quite a bit. This past year, we've been really involved with the community, with giving back, with having different events of our own, just as fundraisers. So anything between, of course, most chapters has some sort of an awards meeting, gathering, gala, whatever it may be, right? So that's 1 month out of the 12, but we've incorporated golf outings to help us with fundraisers throughout, or to really specifically benefit student scholarships and community outreach. Um, we are planning something like steaks, cigar, and bourbon, where it's just something casual. We won't really go over anything official as far as meeting information goes or chapter information goes. Um, but it's all a balance. But I think it's really important to, I guess, figure out how to start, whether it's just getting people to arrive, right? I think that's one of the challenges. We can have any type of meetings or meetups, um, but I think it's just as important to identify some individuals in your community, in your region, in that region, specifically within your chapter, um, and really reach out to those individuals by a phone call, because sometimes emails don't really work so well, and it's it's very important to do some things different from month to month, but at the same point, I think it's really important to get people out to your and know that you're having a meetup, an event, or whatever it may be. So identifying individuals within your board to start off, and then, hey, target audience, right? We have to identify people that we want to be a part of this. We want to start coming out because they may have some influence, um, and some leverage within the community, and reaching out to those individuals and getting them to buy into it as well. Hey, look, at this is what our cause is for. We're trying to give back to all the chefs. Creating a good network within our own region.
That's
So we can go on and on about that, but
Yeah, so it looks like you geared your events, your meetups based off of needs that you're seeing within the community, or I got to tell you, we're doing something with bourbon because a lot of us chefs are anxious to learn a little bit more about bourbon. Like it's okay to be selfish reasons sometimes. But something you said really made me think of something. Derek, you were talking about a veterans event and how reaching out, this was maybe a year and a half ago. I really took that. Do you mind sharing about how you started that event with what Chef Gabe was saying there?
Sure. So this is our second year doing it since COVID. It was something that the Akron Canton area used to do on a regular basis, and then obviously with COVID, things changed. It was something we wanted to get back to. So this year we fed over 300 veterans a free meal, and it's really simpler to get started than what you think. Essentially, the success we had was we called different, like foreign legions, uh, you know, VFWs, and pretty much said, we called them and said, hey, we want to do a free meal, to thank our veterans on Veterans Day. Do you have a commercial kitchen? Would you be willing to host us? And it's no expense to you as a lodge or association. We come and do that. One of our chefs is a member of, I believe it's a VFW or Foreign Legion, I forget. He's a member of one of the lodges that we started going to, and they were doing the event on their own for years and years and years, and then we kind of got involved to help them out and take the burden off of the veterans that now can enjoy the event. And then we decided to expand, and we added a second lodge this year. So finding the location might be the hardest part, because the nice thing is they have a built-in audience. So we're going to have a good turnout because they're already members and going. And then we just leveraged some of our vendors to donate product. And we pretty much prepped everything at one of the members, ACF members' kitchens, transported it and just warmed it up and had a serving line and served food. One lodge actually gave us servers for volunteers. So they had more of a dinner service. And the other lodge we set up as more of a buffet line, real easy to do. So if you want to do that as a chapter, I think there's ways that even a small chapter or with just a few volunteers that you could do something that's impactful. It's just finding creative ways to do that. So.
And I think we geared the conversation more towards events rather than the meetups, but yet where's the line between the two? So that was something, giving back to the community you could think of it as an event, yet the members that were there maybe looked at it as we're going to meet up and do this type of thing. In our area, we personally, the Ronald McDonald House, there's an option for 4 of us to meet up and make dinner for 35 people that are staying at that residence. We've also done some farm tours where it's open to all members and their families. Meet up at this farm. The latest one was a full robotic milking farm. One of our members, his son owned it. And it's right in our backyard. They're nice and close. So, Chef, what are some other meetup ideas that you've done that are more geared towards the let's all get together and learn or do something fun, more so rather than giving back to the community? Anything more along those lines?
Yeah, we always try and focus our different meetups on an educational component and having that social time. So I like you already said farm tours. We've done one with a local distillery. They came out and did a bourbon tasting. And it was really kind of an interesting one because they talked about pairing food with bourbon. And so they were happy to get their product out in front of chefs that operate restaurants and, potentially get the product out into more places. We've done a mixology meeting at a local mixology bar where they did a demo, some cocktail demos, and then we had some cocktails afterwards. So you can find different ways, and every chapter is going to be different. Every chapter is going to have a different make and mix up of chefs and students. So I think by talking with your members and really understanding what motivates them and what they want to see will really help you kind of gear your meetups in that direction. We've noticed in our chapter that nutritional meetings always do well. We've done a gluten-free baking meeting where we brought in Chrissy Jensen from out of state, and that one we had, I think it was 65 people came to that one. So some of our nutritional meetings actually do really well. We have a lot of chefs in our chapter that are either in schools, as far as cooking for students, or in healthcare. So that's directly related to their specialty. So trying to have a variety of topics, so you're not always catering to maybe one type of member or chef in your chapter too.
All great points. Chef Gabe, you were looking like you were trying to jump in there.
Definitely. I think educational seminars are so important. And one of the benefits that I don't think many chapters know about, every meeting that we hold, the chapter presidents have the authority to sign off on a 2-hour continuing education unit for everybody in attendance. And that just goes towards certification, of course. But I think that's one small perk of having those educational seminars. And that could be just, educational presentation of the bourbon, right? It can be a walkthrough of a brewery, just learning how they work the hops, the barley, the grains, all that type of stuff. We're trying to set up something like a maple syrup and corn mill tour, because they do that in one facility right here at Deep River Water Park. It's a part of the Lake County Parks Department, which is really cool. So trying to incorporate some of those things into the meetups, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be where it's served this lavish meal. Sometimes it is. Most of the time, for us, it is. Where we identify different restaurants, we just go to them and say, hey, we're looking to have a meeting. This is who we are, if we're not already associated with them. And are you interested in hosting a group of chefs from anywhere for our chapter? It's easily 40 to 50 people in attendance. When we first started off, kind of giving the chapter a new breath of fresh air and trying to revive the chapter, we've only had maybe 10 to 15 people show up to monthly meetings. So
let me start
trying to do so many different things. Go ahead.
Only because you both hit so many good points and we're going into a couple
sorry.
different things, but I really want to pull real quick. So you both throw numbers out there. I'm curious what your expectation is at, let's just go to our monthly meetups because I think we're all trying to be extremely creative in our monthly meetups so that we're adding to it, but let's look at the monthly meetups. What are you excited about for attendance? Like what would be a number that is fantastic for your chapter?
At this point, again, it would probably be something that we expect is 40 to 50 people. Something that we would be even more ecstatic if we can hit the 60 on average, right? But again, going back, it's been a lot of work trying to do these different things, and it's not all about we have all the answers, right? It's about identifying those people in your area, in your network that are involved with the ACF, trying to, revive that passion, because some of us are a little bit more driven to time spent within the ACF, because we have to understand everybody's very busy. Everybody has their own responsibilities, problems, everything in life that we try to balance, right? So it's just trying to really revive some of that passion to give back within some of those individuals within your chapter. And that's how you can start to make a little bit more progress when you're not the only one doing something.
Right.
You have 3 to 4 5 people trying to reach out to different individuals because they might live in a different location or area of your region.
Absolutely. And we'll get to the planning part and different aspects here in a minute. Chef Derek, you had mentioned at some point, I think 65. What is your, I'm happy if this many people show up number?
Well, actually, what makes me more excited when it's either a member I haven't met before that's been in the chapter for a long time comes out, or a new member comes out. But I'd say our average meeting size is 35 to 45. Average. We've had some, under that, some over that, but definitely when we hit that 60 number, that's exciting.
So let me ask you, because we could all throw out numbers all day, but what percentage of your membership is that?
That's
Just to put it in perspective.
about 25%.
25%? How about for you, Chef Gabe?
Which I'm proud to say it's more of on the end of maybe 60%.
Okay.
A lot of new faces, a lot of people that are bringing guests that are not necessarily a member. So
I think we're
still
spinning
helpful,
around,
but
I think we're spinning around my point is it's not so much the quality or quantity, it's the quality. I think meeting those new members, meeting guests, prospective members. I really value, rekindling and seeing someone I haven't seen in months. And you hear that saying, I've been so busy, but I'm glad you came out tonight. I don't know that I look at the same 50 people every single time. Tonight, my expectations, I was hoping for 5 because I wanted to be blown away. We have more than 5. I felt like that was kind of a locked in, but it could have been 5. So I guess I want to spin us to, instead of it just being the number in attendance, and I should say for our chapter, it varies between, I would say 20 and maybe 40, but yet some meetings may have 75. We have 240 members. So I don't know what that percent is. Don't tell me I want to teach math, but it's not a very high percent. Each chapter is made up differently, has a different percentage of students and professional members. And so I don't gauge my success of meetups based on the number of people that come. I personally base it off of the next day, the vibe that's going through, the talk that's coming from the students, oh, you missed it. That's to me the value I'm looking for. How do you gauge a successful meeting? if it's not attendance, what is something else you're looking for to say? That was a successful meetup. Jeff Derek, why don't we start with you?
Kind of like you said, the buzz after the fact, when photos are out on social media and the responses of people that couldn't go, that, sorry they missed it. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of it too is there's a lot of members that like to stay after and we chat and, I get a lot of good feedback from the membership about, oh, this was a great meeting. We really loved the education component. The speaker was great. So a lot of it just, the feedback from the members that were there and just through social media afterwards. But yeah, to your point, I try not to get tied up on the numbers too much. Of course, if you have a meeting you planned and not a lot of people show up, you get disappointed because of the work that went into it. But either way, even if it's 10, and if those 10 had an impactful night that they enjoyed, even though they spent time away from work and family, then it was an overall success. So
Awesome. Jeff Gabe?
So I'll just say this, like last year,
Jeff, it looks like we're running into technical difficulties.
we took the term February. We had, are you there?
We're good.
Okay. All right. So in late January, we took the new term. So February, we had a meeting at our local area career center because we're trying to get students involved, right? And we have a lot of students in that program. They're doing a lot of great things. Chef Derek at the time and Chef Jack were just really making positive changes within that program. And so we had a good showing at that point. We thought, since we just had a new term, let's do something like a meet and greet. Come and meet the new board, right? So we made little postcards. We tried to send it out, drop it off at some really well-trafficked areas and restaurants and things like that. We try to just make a lot of different contacts. And that was set up for April. In March, we had our big Meals on Wheels gala, which we raised over $100,000 for Meals on Wheels and that cause. We're going into May. We did a meeting at our local design bar, and we had a farmer come out and talk about the different type of feeds that he's approaching, his different approach, and why it's so much better quality. So we just planned so many different things, and that's the thing. I think building excitement when people are missing out on a previous meeting because they're hearing about things. That's what wants them to get involved, or makes them want to get involved, I should say, excuse me. So it's all about how much buzz you can create, how well you're sharing it. We just added our social media chair, which is Jack Velasquez. He's been so instrumental just to making us look good on social media, and this is just things that we normally do, that we wanted to capitalize in the previous term. We just for whatever reason weren't able to make that happen. But those type of things, with adding individuals that can bring some really skill and talent to help benefit the overall chapter, really creates that buzz. And that's what helped us create some momentum. We went into national convention. At the same month, we did a golf outing. And 3 months later, we're doing our Taste of the Farm, which was our first inaugural Taste of the Farm event, which helped a local food bank of Northwest Indiana. And we took portion for the student scholarships. So all those type of things for us, for our region, it was huge. It was so instrumental, and it helped us build so much momentum to where we were able to take 30 members in January to today. I'm proud to say that we're at 63 members, which is 115% increase within just 13 months. So I think just trying to be creative, trying to get so many people, different people to help, because it just does not fall on one individual. So many individuals can do this. It takes a few minds that are driven, and a lot of work.
Absolutely. And let's circle back. First, congratulations on the 100,000 plus for Meals on Wheels. That is extremely awesome. I didn't want to interrupt and say wow at that moment, but congratulations. Increased your, sounds like you've added value within your chapter that has lured people in. The buzz you've created, it's helping you grow. And you're able to engage your other members and board members. And so I kind of want to go back to the beginning. How do we start planning these meetups? Who's involved? How far in advance? I mean, if there's 12 meetups a year, there's always a meetup down the road. So let's start with you, Chef Derek. And how do you get started in planning, let's say, a monthly meetup? How do you get started with that?
So I'm a big proponent of Google Docs because we can access it anywhere you want. So when an idea pops into your head, a contact, or you're out at an event and you're talking with somebody and you want to jot that down, I use it all the time. So I never lose track of what I'm doing, and I'm always referencing my constant Google Doc checklist. So I plan at least a quarter in advance. Sometimes 6 months to a year, I'm planning out. Some of the chefs, if you want to bring in a high demand chef, their calendar is going to be booked way in advance. So you might be looking that far out. So generally, it'll be myself and the board of directors will come up with ideas. We all have a variety of different contact chefs we know. We look within the chapter. Do we have any chefs in the chapter that have a skill set and a topic that we think would be interesting or provide value? We look within the ACF outside of our chapter. And then we look outside of ACF and everybody as well. So essentially what we'll do is we'll get a list together. We'll jot down the months and either the topic or the speaker. And then either myself or one of my board members will then take the lead on that specific meeting. So like my vice president might take this meeting and get the room finalized. If there's any expenses, let the board know so we can look at that. Make sure the speaker's on track, and just have all those things in place so we're ready to go for the meeting. And honestly, we lean on our partners a lot to do a lot of the heavy lifting with the meetings. So for example, we have a meeting coming up that's going to be a beef fabrication meeting. And so all I have to do is find a location, and our meat vendor is going to supply everything else. So selfishly, we try and find things like that as much as we can to make it a lot easier to execute and plan our meetups. But yeah, so we plan 3 to 6 months out generally, rough ideas, and then as we get closer, we really start finalizing everything, and just figure out the location. And our total region, we pretty much cover Northeast Ohio. It's not as big as some chapters as far as driving distance, but you figure from one end to the other is about a 2-hour distance. So we try to bounce our meetings around, so that way everyone doesn't always have to drive a long distance from home. That seems to be positive too.
Okay, and just to finish up that thought, like what are some of the locations that you host your meetings at, meetups at?
So culinary schools, we have a lot of culinary schools in the area. Some of them are accredited, which makes it really easy because they want to be involved and they want to help because they're already accredited.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, whether it's college level or we have a lot of great JVS programs, and either they're accredited or the chefs are ACF chefs. So they are always wanting to host. We use churches. There's a church in one of our regions that has a banquet facility where they do weddings and stuff attached to the church. And the chef there does us cuts us a really good deal where he charges very little for hors d'oeuvres and beverages and non-alcoholic beverages. But it's one of those things where we don't pick the menu. It's just his choice. It's probably stuff maybe he had an event 2 days ago, whatever it is. And he always does a nice job and does a little spread for us. It's very inexpensive. But we've done it at, restaurants, and a lot of times it'll be the place of business of one of our members. We'll reach out to, if we know that one of our chefs runs the convention center, we'll ask them like, hey, when are you dark? What time of year is it good that we could just pop in for a meeting, knowing that it's not going to cost him very much as far as like his business. And when can we do that? So we get a lot of our meetings and locations for little to no money. And that really helps us. The partners really want to be there. And one thing to leverage too, if any of you guys have equipment brokers in your area, like for example, we have Zinc Food Service in our area. They have a test kitchen just outside in one of the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio. And they're always looking to host it. It's a beautiful test kitchen, and you can seat like 40 people in their demo kitchen. And the nice thing is if you pair that with anything that's food related, it's not in competing. So it's not like I'm demoing and competing equipment or talking about it in his kitchen. I might bring in Smithfield and using his equipment, and so it's not a competing thing. So they all like to, they play well together. So sometimes you have to think about that, like who's sponsoring the meeting, and make sure you're not involving direct competitors in some way.
Absolutely. Great tips, great ideas. And just to feed off quickly, I love going to schools. I love hosting at our school. The idea that the students get that pride of hosting for these chefs, they get introduced to these chefs in their house. It is such an easier road to say hi to someone when you're comfortable with your environment.
Right.
It's extremely important to us. We really try in our chapter to include schools as much as possible. All right, Chef Gabe, you mentioned a little bit how you get started, but let's back up a little bit. So you have, let's say, 11 monthly meetups to plan. Let's say it's January, you only have a few months out. How do you get started with your outlook?
Sure. First off, your board of directors are very, very essential. You need to express how important those roles are. Those are not exactly a volunteer role. You took on a commitment. You were elected into this position. You took on an oath. You have a responsibility. And if you can't fulfill that responsibility, you kind of have to have a private conversation with those individuals. But with that said, how important they are just a part of the team as any other. Hey, it's important. Do you have any resources, any contacts? Depends on where they work at, right? It depends on how much leverage they have to be transparent, and depending on how much buying power, I should say, within the vendors themselves. So some people are not exactly so comfortable with asking, but I wasn't comfortable at one point either, and you just kind of have to bite the bullet and make those connections, because food brokers, vendors, things like that will all want to be a part of it. With that said, I think it's important, especially when a new board is coming in, you're trying to make connections. A meet and greet is appropriate, and a complimentary meet and greet. Some people we charge for meetings, but in this case, we're asking all the participating chefs, hey, you mind bringing like a little 1-2 bite to share with everybody who comes in. And you're really trying to reach out to your vendors. You're trying to reach out to all those food service professionals, food industry professionals, whether it's front of house individuals, whether it's managers, owners. Everybody has something to do with this business, and they are all welcome within the ACF, and they should absolutely know that. Yes, it's more driven towards chefs. However, we understand we can't necessarily survive on our own. We need the resources of the industry. So I think it was very important for us to just have a meet and greet, just to try and make those connections, reach out, get people out here saying, hey, trying to post it everywhere you possibly can, whether it's in church bulletins, whether it's hanging in certain restaurants, little bulletin board themselves for advertisement. It's within the region, and teaching them who you are and who we are and what we do for the community, for chefs and our profession. So, and then aside from just meet and greet, establishing meetings, we really try to identify a place that, hey, that'd be cool to have a meeting, right? Okay, we wrote up a memorandum of understanding. So basically, what to expect when hosting meetings. It starts off with, obviously, the venue will provide the meals and are encouraged to request donations from their vendors. And we can sometimes put them in connection with some of our current partners, right? So then we do give a stipend. Okay, it's typically $300 up to 50 people. And if it's more people, then obviously, and that's just to help alleviate some of the costs. It's definitely beneficial to try and get all the donations or find an individual sponsor for an event or for a meeting. But some of us are just not in a position to, and we're trying to get ourselves there, but we're just not quite yet. And whether we take the reservations and we personally reach out, again, it takes an extra effort. Emailing, people are not going to most likely read that email. Okay, it's going to take a personal contact, a phone call saying, hey, I see you, I know who, I want you to know who I am, I want you to personally come out to our next meeting because I think it's important for you to be a part of the ACF. You're doing great things there, and I think you belong. And those type of things go a long way, but it takes personal contact. It takes developing relationships. It's just not looking at somebody like another number and another member. You genuinely, I genuinely want to develop relationships with these individuals. This is not a competition. We're all in different sectors of the industry. So even if we are in some of the same capacity, most of the time we help each other rather than, oh, you're my competition.
Right.
So
Absolutely. Well, I heard the board and delegate, and the board is a team, and how everybody can pull on their own resources within the chapter, resources without or outside the chapter and outside the ACF. Again, within your community, reaching out to local schools, a lot of great ideas there on locations, on, just getting started and pulling on resources. But absolutely right. Not everybody starts off being able, I'm just going to throw out a Nick Barrington that has tons of sponsors, because I feel like he's got the lingo to, just give me your money. And they do. And, that was one of the first presentations we heard. I sat there like, oh my gosh, did he just say what? And it was just, I needed to hear more. How is that started? And so I think a lot of great ideas there. And again, yeah, we're all completely different. Just hearing the cost involved, or I want to move on to that. What you do as far as if you pay for it, if you charge members for it. Our Harrisburg chapter, we personally do not charge any members. Guests are free, and we never pay for a meetup. We would even as a board bring in the food ourselves. We pull from absolutely every resource we can possibly pull from, and we're dying to find out what others do to, give us some more suggestions. Chef Derek, let's jump to you on that one.
One thing I just want to touch on that David brought up was about buying power, how some people don't feel comfortable because they don't personally have the buying power. You have to remember that you're representing the chapter. So the chapter has the buying power. Because I asked the same thing to one of my past presidents, who's an educator. And I said, well, hey, when we have these events, how did you get the partners and sponsors to cover for the clam bakes and all this stuff? He said, well, you got to remember, I don't buy a lot of stuff at the school. He said, but all of our members do, and I'm calling on behalf of the chapter. So they still look at it as I have the buying power, even though I personally don't have that level. So just one thing to kind of throw out there to chapter presidents that might be in education or smaller businesses that maybe don't have as much as, you know, corporate chefs and things like that. So for our chapter, it varies by meeting. I would say if we hold 11 regular meetings a year, we charge for one, if that. And that would only be if it was a premium meeting that was an expense to the chapter. So the one mixology meeting we did at a mixology bar, there was a cost associated with that. So we charge for all guests and members, and but they got a free cocktail as part of that charge. So at least, you know, it was worthwhile. It was only $15 for members. So you figure you're going to spend $15 on a craft cocktail anyway. So it was a win-win. But most meetings are free for all members, free for students. And what we tell students are, you're going to pay the same amount as a chapter member. So if it's free for the member, it's free for you. If it's $5 or $10 because it's, you know, it's a big expense, then that's the case as well. Before, our chapter used to charge for every meeting, and it was a topic of conversation that I had with past president when I was just a sergeant at arms, and we had talked about it. You know, we're already charging an annual fee, and they probably have to pay the park depending where we're at. Then they're paying for a meeting. It just seemed to compound it. Do we have to? And when we looked at the books and the financials, we didn't have to. So we kind of stopped. But we always will charge guests, even if it's only a $5, $5 or $10. So that way it shows value for membership. Hey, you know, because otherwise, why would they join if they could just come to every single meeting for free? Now, students are different, right? But we have a lot of guests that will come on a regular basis and will pay the $5 or $10. And they might be spouses or partners of members. It might be clients or vendors and people that work for the vendors. So that's really how that goes. And then as far as paying for the meeting, like I said, most of them we don't pay for. We'll get donations, sponsorships, but some do. I like to try and budget for like one, I call it like a premium meeting a year. So I mentioned how we brought in Chrissy Jensen to do a gluten-free baking demonstration. So there was an expense, travel, hotel. So that cost the chapter, but we were in a strong financial position where we still didn't have to charge anybody to come. So that, you know, that was last year and we were in a good spot. And we're trying to continue that. You know, can we bring in a well-known ACF chef that can, you know, educate us on a really interesting topic and not have to charge membership? That's always a challenge. And I know in the past they've brought in Chef Fritz Sonnenschmidt, and he stayed at one of the members' house, and she chauffeured him around and took care of him. So she put him up at her house. So if people are comfortable doing that, I don't know what everyone is, but they've been friends for a long time, so there's no big deal. But that's kind of where we are. For the most part, we really don't pay much. Some schools will ask for a stipend to cover the cost of food, and so that's all part of the initial negotiation when I first reach out. Most schools just put it in, you know, use it as an educational opportunity with their students, and then they have the students do all the food and gives them an opportunity to do that. So it kind of depends.
Okay, and something interesting, I heard both of you, it seems like you tie most times, your location, education, food, kind of all together, but yet, Derek, I heard you mention you've got this beef fabrication, this and that. I'm wondering if separation of duties would help. I'm looking in the chat, we don't charge, and, you know, we're lucky to get 10, but we really struggle with locations. Asking someone to host you, put together a meal, to provide the service for it, and then could you educate us on the side? Sometimes it's too overwhelming, and that's where I love having a board delegated to where one person finds a site. One's in charge of this, one's in charge, and you work as a team to put it off. Any suggestions for Jennifer in the chat here? You know, we're lucky. We just struggle to get places, and we're looking for somewhere around like 10 people. Any creative suggestions for her?
I mean, I would think potentially, you know, what about the members themselves? You know, like, for example, I would host a meeting in one of my properties at any point in time, I would charge a chapter. So there may be opportunities there. Like I said, if you have any accredited schools, she did say the schools want to charge rental fee. That's just something to try and negotiate. And it depends on the size of the chapter. We really leverage our buying power. One thing that I took from what you said about Nick Barrington at that presentation that I took from him was he did a survey to all of his members to figure out what actually his buying power was as a chapter. So we kind of did the same thing and came up with this astronomical number. That's accurate. I mean, I looked at my P&Ls for December and I can't believe how much food we buy. So we use that when we reach out to members. We have vendors. We have a letter that talks about who we are, what we do, what are we made up of, how many people are in the chapter, and what are our focuses? What are the pillars of our chapter? And it's just those things that get people excited to help. It helps too that we have several educators in the chapter that will host us. So we have a lot of really good connections, and our chapter has been around for a long time. It's been an active and strong chapter for a long time. So I understand that I am lucky with the membership activity that I have, and not every chapter is going to have the same opportunities that we need.
Okay,
Ideas that they can take from.
awesome.
Yeah, and I'd like to touch base on that a little bit, because a good point is, even though a chapter might not have many chefs that order from a particular vendor, okay, hey, look for the food brokers as well, but don't overlook those vendors, because hey, do you want to be in a position to reach so many different chefs in one different location, rather than going individually and blind prospecting if they're interested in sales with you? Those are the type of things. It's just like, hey, make connections, develop relationships. Same thing that I tell our board members and my own connections is what I try to tell the vendors. Build those relationships with those chefs. Come out to our meeting. Help us. Donate something, because it will eventually put you in a position to where somebody, man, I've been working with you for so long. You've been helping us out. When I have had the opportunity to give you a little bit more business or whatnot, or something of that nature, it's going to be beneficial for them in the long run.
Absolutely. Great. And I was going to bring up from that Nick Barrington presentation, of doing the survey and realizing what you have within your chapter was important. And again, not everyone has the resources in your chapter, or you might not have the same resources. I'm going to point back towards the community for my suggestion is, anything cool locally that, and you're at a benefit that you have a small group right now. I'm sure it would grow the more cool things you would do, but I'm sure you've exhausted options, but I guess my suggestion is, what are some abstract places? I saw in the chat also of having every other month meetups. And that way there's not as much pressure. I do feel sometimes like we are event planners and it's just to have meetup once a month. So, there's certainly, and I love that everyone's added into the chat there so that everyone can engage there as well. I'm noticing the time. So let me jump through. I want to hit maybe two other areas. How do you advertise? How do you get people in the door? Do you advertise any extra perks, any giveaways? How do you lure people in? Where do you post? What do you do? Who wants to start? Go ahead, Chef Derek.
So where we post, Facebook is our main social media that we utilize. We do use LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, X as well, but most of our membership is engaged through Facebook. We do email reminders. So through our website, we do, as soon as we publish the meeting, we send out a meeting reminder right away, and then it will automatically remind them like 2 weeks out, 1 week out, 3 days, and day out. So we hit them with a lot of emails as a reminder. one thing that we find is that the more that we articulate what the presentation is, the better turnout we have. If it just says chapter meetup, this location, we don't get a lot of response. But if it's, this is the guest speaker, and, you know, our meetings are very little business. It's all about the presentation, the education, and the networking. We don't do all the business stuff really. It's more of the camaraderie and the educational piece. So that's kind of our focus in networking and or the promoting is on social media. Now, my first year, we were doing giveaways every meeting, and then I've been kind of slacking on that, but we would tie in to the meeting. So if the chef had a cookbook, we would raffle off a copy of this cookbook. If it was a brewery meeting, we would have, you know, some different things that, you know, go along with that. But we always do a 50-50 raffle that everyone likes to engage with, so we do that every time. And then one thing we do for students that's kind of fun is if a student volunteers to read the Culinarians Code, then I always have something to give them. It might be a ACF Cleveland Chapter coffee mug, or a copy of, you know, Food Lover's Companion, or something. It might be a chef's knife that I you know, have plenty of extras in my basement. I usually thumb through and I'll find something. So that's something that actually the students started catching on. So now when I say who wants to read the Culinarians Code, like 5 hands go up every time, because they want to know what's next, what's the goodie that they're going to get. So yeah, so that's kind of some different things that we've dabbled in over the last.
It sounds like you get the word out on all platforms, a lot of emails, but the word of mouth buzz that, you know, they're anticipating what your education, how you word it, titling it, not just a bland this is what you should be excited to come and see. That's
Right.
great. Chef Gabe, how do you market it? How do you get people there?
Well, I first create a Facebook event, let people know exactly where it's at, try to fill in as many details as possible. We do charge for most meetings. Some meetings, if everything's taken care of and things like that, or if we're just trying to, you know, it depends on what type of financial situation we're in. But definitely create a Facebook event and include as many details as possible. As far as the charges, we charge what students 10, members 15, non-members 20. And we are certainly trying to get it going in a direction to where we don't have to charge for anything. Any of our meetups. I think that's just really important for member benefits and value of membership, of course. But we actually have an opportunity to work with Libby. Libby's actually going to provide a wine tasting for us. They're going to provide glasses for us as well. We have a good relationship with Brittany O'Rourke, which is the our region's sales manager, but she actually donated lowball glasses to our presidential gala too. Full color etching on those, and I was very, very surprised because I thought it was just going to be the white etching with obviously our logo and the date of course, the venue. It was in full color, very, very classy. However, she actually came to me and asked, hey, would we be able to do some type of wine tasting for the membership? And again, I think it's really helping us create those, by creating those relationships, by networking with individuals, and then seeing what we're doing, we are getting individuals that want to be involved. But up until then, you know, it's very important, again, just to develop those relationships and personally reach out. How are we marketing it? Yeah, we can certainly send an email. Again, it's going to fall on deaf ears for in most cases. Once you start to develop those relationships, people are going to want to come out and see you, see what you're talking about, especially when they finally do see you on social media and they were there. They're going to end up having that fear of missing out. So hopefully you can generate that, and I'd certainly love to help anybody. Reach out to me. I'm on Chef's Table my email's available. You can find me on ACF Chefs of Northwest Indiana ACF page. My cell phone, my email, every way to contact me is here. And if there's any help that I can provide anyone.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. We're still going to go a little further though. Just a
Sure.
couple more thoughts and spin-offs. Looking at the chat, a couple questions as far as, do you have standard dates? Is there like a set time? And I see the discussion of, you taking votes and taking polls and seeing if that lowers everyone. But before we jump into that, want to just point direction to the Polly Barrington demonstration that of how to create a flyer. So while we say about posting events and this and that, those eye-catching flyers, something to like, oh wow, what is that? So sometimes how we advertise it just in the picture's sake and putting the name of it. I've even sent out the top 10 reasons you should attend meetings in email or the meetups, and I think they're humorous, but I don't hear back. So, but I'm trying, I'm putting as many spins as I can on it. But again, the catchy flyers, the hitting the right social media, I think getting the word out ahead of time and saying it over and over again. One other area we didn't mention was on the national website. There's a chapter page for each of us that lists our next meeting, when our next meetup is going to be. And you have to redo that each month, but super important as chefs are traveling in different areas and want to quick pop in, they can quickly look and see where that meetup might be. All right, so one of the things in the chat is the date, the time. Is it standard? Does it vary? Is it based on location? How do you plan what the date and time is each month for your meetup? Chef Gabe?
So we try to go with the second Monday of each month or the third Monday of each month. We have a challenge with just some of this other chapters. We try to work with each other and support each other by attending each other's events. I know some vendors, we are associated with the same vendor. So honestly, we just are kind of just trying to stay ahead of it by a couple months. To be transparent, we would like to be, hey, I like to book this whole month out, or I'm sorry, this whole year out, every month, a year in advance. Try to lock them in. Say, for instance, if we're going to Farmhouse in February, hey, are you interested in hosting next February? But we haven't just got to that point. There's just been a lot of ideas that we've been throwing out there. But yeah, I mean, we're just really trying to go with the flow, and it finds what really works for us at that time because of other events going on in the community.
Okay, so you have varying schedule with your meetups, but you advertise it well, and you've been growing your attendance and participation. So definitely kudos. What you're doing is working well. So by no means do you have to have it planned. I saw in the chat, planning it out for the next year helps set up a new board or this or that. Personally, again, we were kind of in January with just a month or two, and really went hard on locations and then something else. Chef Derek, what are your thoughts?
So we primarily host our regular monthly meetups on Mondays, but it's not always the first or second. It's on a Monday. And we're generally around a 6 o'clock start time is where we kind of live. But then we do other events kind of throughout the year, and it just kind of falls on different days. And I liked how Chef Eric said in the notes how he sent out a survey of what works best. So when we do our president's event, we have one actually coming up this Thursday for our end of the year gala. And I've had some members that had told me how they we used to do a Sunday brunch. It was a president's brunch. And after COVID, we had a challenge with finding location. So we kind of went away from that the last 2 years. But some have asked, how come we don't do it on Sundays again? It's nice to be able to do it when we can bring spouses, we're not rushing after work and all that kind of stuff. So I think just knowing what your chapter looks for and eventually reaching out to your member and say, hey, what would be the best day for everybody, and doing some kind of survey would be a good idea. But most of our members are off on Mondays, so that's what's kind of always worked for us. But it's not a hard second Monday of every month.
Okay, and I hear a lot of Mondays. I hear Monday tends to be an easier day for a lot of people to attend. I know our chapter, Sunday would wipe out pretty much every professional chef. You know, we have in our bylaws, it is the third Monday of each month. Unless deemed necessary to change that, you know, there's always that clause in there. But the consistency from the beginning was very important to the founding members, that it is always that third Monday. And we found challenges in that, but knowing that's our box to work within, we stretch the walls as much as we can. So, you know, I think, again, every chapter is different. You know, some like the consistency, some like the, I can never make it. We have our board of director, he has class every Monday night. He can never attend our meetings, but yet that's the way it is. Yeah. So again, I don't know that you'll ever hit everyone, you'll ever be able to catch anyone, you know, and that was something we tossed around here too, just within our task force. When do we want to have these meetups? Do we want to make it consistent? Do we want to change the date? So we're doing just that. We're polling to see, what are you looking for? Because this Tuesday evening works well for us. We're hoping it does work well for others, but we want to get some data to pull from. There's a lot of members that want to be involved in this movement. I have sent an email to all those that were involved in New Orleans that attended both days. Please continue to spread the word and, you know, help us to gain more momentum and really continue this conversation. I do see that it's 7 o'clock, so I wanted to go ahead and kind of end our Q&A and open it up for the opportunity for anyone else to have a discussion. I'm going to leave the recording for about 5-10 minutes, but then I feel I can cut it off. And anyone else that wants to continue the conversation, I want to make sure that you have that opportunity. Chefs, any last moving, inspirational words you can leave us with when it comes to your meetups?
You go first, Gabe.
That was you're up first, Chef Gabe.
Well, again, all right, I'll take it. Again, making connections, developing new relationships is very, very key. It's not very, you know, easy. It's going to take some work, and chip away at it. It's not going to change overnight. You know, you can make a difference within no time if you can identify one member at a time or one venue at a time, and just give them a good understanding of who we are as ACF chefs and what we're all about. And most of the time that's going to, you know, get your foot in the door to develop some relationships. So again, if there's anything that I could be of assistance with, reach out. I'm always here to help. And this is just the beginning for chapters supporting chapters.
Thank you, Chef. Absolutely. Chef Derek?
Well, so I would say that we focused on having meetings that are impactful for the membership. Because what we found was that nobody wanted to sit around and hear us read the minutes from the last meeting and all of that business stuff. Perfect example, we have our financial report. Sometimes we read them at the meeting, sometimes we suspend it. When we suspend it, we have it available in a binder up front with all of our financials. In the last 2+ years, I've not had one member come up to dig through the finances, because that's not what brings them out, to sit and hear the board talk about all this stuff. At least in our chapter, they come out for the camaraderie and the educational component and the networking. That's what really drives our membership to engage. And I know a lot of people talk about consistency. New meetings, that works for them, and that's great. We just saw, we had a unique perspective because we merged chapters recently, Canton, and we were very different. Cleveland had a lot of success in certain areas, and Akron Canton had success in very different areas that Cleveland was weak at. So now we've kind of brought the best of both worlds, and where Cleveland always succeeded was engagement with membership and meetings, where Akron had other strengths like competition certification. Well, yeah, we've always found success in just having dynamic meetings We don't do membership drives and all these types of things. We just find that people want to be a part of what we're doing. They see us in the community, like anytime we're at the big charity events in Cleveland, there's an ACF banner. And there's somebody from the chapter represented, whether it's Notre Dame's, Taste of the Browns, or whatever. And it doesn't always have to be the president. So if a member's going, and you could say, hey, if anybody's doing charity events and you want to take the chapter flag or the chapter tablecloth or the chapter whatever to promote the chapter while you're just naturally at an event, please do. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can promote the chapter, get engagement. Students, and like I said, what worked for us is just having dynamic meetings that people wanted to come to. And I understand that that's not every chapter, and some chapters, the business part is very important. So I'm not saying we need to change the way you guys hold the meetings, but just recognize what your membership wants or what they're looking for is really what's going to help drive you in the right direction. So talk to your members, engage with them, and just find out what they're looking for.
Great. My last piece of, I guess just my last piece for, in regards to doing, organizing how you do your meetups is do you, be your chapter and what works for your chapter. Do something different, be original, creative, but do what works for you. And what generally works for me is I want to have fun myself and I want to get something out of the meetup. Whether I'm the one talking, presenting, think of how you can engage and what could benefit you as well. That's okay to have something that benefits you. We all volunteer our time and there has to be something in return, some gratification. So by all means, be you, do you, and think about, the value you get in each of those meetups as well. All right, at this point, again, thank you all for joining us. I think we just really kind of scratched the surface. We could talk about this for a long period of time. What I did was I have already clicked off that anyone can unmute at any point in time. There was one topic or conversation question that we had to end it and really kind of start the engagement here. We're looking for what could we present or discuss at our next meetup? And what else are we looking to engage with at the national convention? And we're looking for topics. So whether we discuss now, whether you think about it and get back to us, again, check out any of those resources we mentioned to get that information. We'd love for one of you to be a presenter and speak on something. I got to tell you, Jack, the whole TikTok video thing, I've never typed in the word TikTok other than if I wrote it in an email. So I think that's definitely a demand on my end, selfishly. But again, I already said that was okay. So anyone else have anything that, I'd really like to catch this. I'd like to learn more about. I'd like to hear how other chapters are doing. Anyone have anything they'd like to add? Again, you should be able to unmute yourself. All right. Not seeing anyone rushing to unmute. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Real quick, I'm Jennifer, president of Orange County. I've been on the board since 2010. And like I said, we used to do a lot of stuff with the Art Institute when it was open because we were an accredited school. We're also attached to OCC, which I believe is getting back into their accreditation here. And we are going to take a team to competition. But I would say right now, half of our membership is students because of that. And then the other half is us still trying to reach out to a lot of the old chefs that used to be in the industry that just don't really have time anymore. And I think I get it. We used to do breakdowns. We used to do whole pig roast. I mean, we used to do all sorts of fun stuff, but they just don't have the time. And that's, I think the hardest thing is to get them back into like just the networking side of it. I mean, I get calls daily of, hey, do you have people that would want to work? Like I get that as an instructor that I've been for so long. But I think our hardest thing is always like, oh, well, I just don't have time to go somewhere to have a meeting and then spend, 3 hours out of their night or whatever. So that's the other thing is trying to find that value of yes, education's part of it and doing something fun is part of it. But it also comes back to okay, like then we have to come up with what that is and have our vendors help us with that. So I know Fiona, you guys have had some of the kind of same things we've had in the area, and maybe it's just kind of an LA thing, but our chefs are working 7 days a week. They don't have people. And that's the biggest problem right now, I think, for us on our end.
I
Yeah.
feel like we're exhausting our board. It's
Oh, yeah, no.
it's always a fail safe is that we would make all the food and bring it. We would just do the education, the demo, and who wants to be part of a board that has to do all the work? Fiona, go
All the
ahead.
way.
I saw you unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I really had a hard time like motivating not just members to like come out, come on down, but it's the whole board where everyone has things to do, and it's kind of hard to everyone get on the same schedule. It's like, how do you motivate someone to find that time? Where, and then like, is Zoom the best option? And then some people are, I don't want to meet in Zoom, I want to meet in person. That motivational piece, so that like this being the last year of my role as a president, it's like, I don't want to lose it. I want people, like, I want to be able to encourage someone else to do it, not just be like, oh Lord, I'm so tired, I'm done with this. Trying to be the cheerleader all the time. So, like, what little, like, is it the quality of the meetup, or is it the quantity are we looking at? Luckily I've gotten, like, just literally right now, I got, hey, we can use our venue, we can use our classroom. And I was like, ooh, yes. So it's good to have those people, like, but like, how do you keep getting like kicked down and then be like, oh, I want to do this again. So, like, those suggestions of just motivating, helping, supporting, I mean, they're all great ideas. And then it's like, okay, now I have to like walk through, at least like Jack said, how do you eat a elephant one bite at a time? Like, I love that, reading that, I'm like, you're right, one day at a time. We're gonna knock these meetings out, and if something comes up, we'll just plug in something else. But really motivating each other is probably like my hardest thing as a president. Like, how do I keep that in, like, it's okay, don't worry, I'll do it. Like,
Well,
and
and
I
you don't
see
want
you
to
guys.
do it all. It shouldn't fall just on you to do it all as the
No.
president. And when your term is up as the chairman of the board, and I think growing the boards, I feel like we just evolved into our next conversation.
Yeah.
Building strong board members that can keep it going, that want to mentor under and want to take that momentum you've gotten and not wait till you're the president to start reaching out. Again, everybody on the board and, finding that confidence. Gabe was talking about having a, kind of an understand, this is a commitment, not just a volunteer. You volunteered for this commitment, but now it's a commitment, and then you talk about others that might have like a contract that you're signing. Here's what your expectations are and roles. I think, again, that could be a whole nother conversation. It's just how to engage and really build your boards up to where it's not just the president. I feel like a lot of us can relate to each other. It is exhausting. Keep asking whether you have funds or not. It's definitely a great point.
Yeah, Chef, and just to piggyback on that, I think it's important, just not only your board, okay? Yes, some people have been serving for a very long time. They're just not in it anymore, right? Or whatever the case is. Some people might just be way too busy. But at the same point, we can identify some of those members where they could still make an instrumental part of your board of directors, because, hey, you can appoint anybody to any position, right? You could expand your board a little bit. If you understand that maybe you don't have, the support that you need within your board of directors, the elected positions, you start to branch out a little bit into your appointed positions. And I know it's easier said than done, but at the same point, if you could identify some individuals that really can view things how you view it, how maybe you can inspire them, and this is where it starts off with just one person. One person, if they could just reach out to one other person, that's now what we can double it because you're still working on somebody that's four. We can start to double things, and I think that's the approach that Northwest Indiana took, where it's just like one at a time. Hey, you work on that person, I'll work on this person, and we can slowly start to chip away because it's very difficult. Things are not going to happen overnight, and sometimes, yeah, it's just like this person's really, really just resistant or hesitant or whatever the case is. Okay, move on to the next person. Identify your low-hanging fruit first, and that's how you can start to make a bigger impact. If you can just identify a few people that view things how you view it, and then you can all work together to divide and conquer is the quote that I like to tell everybody. It's just like once we identify, we're all on the same page as a team. Now we divide and conquer. We can all take our own teams and accomplish so much more. And I like the idea of just even creating subcommittees, because just one thing with our golf outing, it's just like, oh man, this is a lot to do. Okay, you take on finance, you create your subcommittee, take one or two individuals and create a budget for us. Okay, the next person is going to work on sponsorship. Find one or two individuals that can help you reach out to our target audience, and we strategically have to identify those. It's the same way when approaching sponsors or partners. It's the same way when approaching members, and it's the same way when we're approaching opportunities to find meeting hosts and venues and things like that. It's the same concept. It's just you have to really you need a support system. It's not easy, and you have to first identify that.
Awesome. So
So-
certainly
Hey.
not a position to just talk someone into, that's for sure. Making sure that they're like-minded, they're engaged. Was
If
there
I could just add something really quick. I didn't want to unmute because I'm over here. It's kind of loud. But I just wanted to add, I know we have a lot of success with our chapter. And first of all, everyone is a fantastic conversation. I'm really happy to be on this call. I was very happy to be in the chat. And thank you for all the value you've added tonight. I greatly appreciate it. But we've had success in the chapter, but it came with a lot of work, a lot of late phone calls, a lot of no's. And yes, we got some yeses. And, Gabe brought up momentum, and we would have days like, how do we keep this momentum going? What do we got to do next? And it helps to have a wingman, to keep you on those days where you're just like, man, like today sucked, and you just got to keep it going. And what else can we do? And, celebrate those little victories to keep it going. And those days of momentum helped what we're having now, the success that we have now. And now you have the chefs that maybe weren't as involved before, but now they come up to you and say, hey, chef, how can I help? And before you would think, man, I wish, you're getting those now. And before you're like, do we ask, or they're so busy? And those chefs that were really busy, and you're like, no, we shouldn't ask them. Now they're asking us for help. And it's like, man, it gets a lot easier. And we're still thinking, I'm at a summit now. And it makes you get out of your comfort zone, because you just want to do everything for your chapter. And I wouldn't have thought I would be out here. My family's at home, but I know that any way I can make the industry grow, it's going to help us out as a whole. And that's what it took for our chapter. It's like, okay, if I don't have I already used all my resources. What I got to do? I got to go to a food show. I got to go reach out to the community. Oh, there's a grand opening. Oh, we got to go over here. It was just like a year of exhaustion to have the fruits of our labor now. And that's what it had to the point where the year that we had. And now it's kind of like, okay, let's just keep this going. And all right, that's all I got. I don't know what else to say. But that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
That's awesome. You're having a wingman. I gotta say, I always I have that go-to, and I'm just gonna call him out. Jay-Z is I need a mojo lifter upper. I need someone to just make it seem like my troubles are so small, or like, shake that off because look at this, or look at the bright side. And I think that's important to have. But again, not everybody has that within their board. So finding and mentoring and working forward with a strong board, I think, is an important conversation we could definitely have. Let's circle back, Jennifer. You started this with, your initial approach here. I don't feel like we necessarily responded to that, but yet it spurred off on many other conversations. So did we help give any suggestions in any way to you? Is there more we can get?
No, I think all this is great. It's nothing new to me. Like I said, I've been on this board for over 14 years. Our part of it is, a lot of it is that we just need those people stepping up. And I mean, Michael's my vice president, and there's maybe two of us that do stuff and not a lot. So I think that's the hardest part, is that other people that are on our board per se aren't necessarily stepping up. And yes, I know we have to ask them, but we get we're busy and we're all busy. I get that. Like, we all get that, right? But when we hold an event and no one on our board brings anybody but myself, that's not a good event.
Yeah.
That's a horrible.
Absolutely.
And they're the
Absolutely.
same people that support me in every time we have an ACF event. So and again, we do have to grow in that respect and start bringing people to the table. But again, it's just like, if I'm going to put on an event and we're going to pay money for it, and we have the money to do it, our chapter has money. So that's not the issue. It's just, then who are we bringing to the table to bring that, to bring in those members, I guess, or to bring in new members, or to bring in customers that they have, or that type of stuff. So I think that's the hardest part, is having, everyone else go out there and bring somebody else in. Yeah. I don't know. I know, Fiona, I know you guys have some problems, the same thing in LA. And sometimes it's a location issue, and sometimes it's just like, it's not a good night for certain people. And I understand that too. So we've always been consistent with our boards usually being on a Monday also, until it kind of gets to where that's just a busy day for everybody now. So we'll be looking at doing it something big in spring. And when we did have locations, that's the best part, is, it's great that you have locations. But when we're having to find a location every time, that's also a huge difficulty, because now we have to have insurance for certain things, and we have to have, at OCC, we had to pay a rent. So those are the things that we've had to change since, per se, COVID, or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of what we're looking at on our end. So, but yeah, I mean, we're trying to get out there, and we try and do our best always, like we try and have fun things, more education stuff we're looking at. We just had our January meeting was just that, about what are we going to do and to set us up for success, basically. So this kind of fell into it, and I'm glad that Michael's here too.
Yes. Welcome.
I think it's been a very fruitful discussion for us. It's kind of validated some of our thought processes we moved along. But as we're in a rebuilding phase, we were decimated by COVID, and our membership is down so far. And it's how do we build all that back? And it seems to be, from what I've heard tonight, you build it, they'll come. So if you're able to build value in your meetings and have consistency in those meetings, whether it's 12 a year or 6 a year, whatever it is, make them consistent and make them of value, and bring in that student component to it as well for future membership, and bring people along with you. That's kind of where we're at, which is like, where's that value? Because it's like, how do you pull in people, like even vendor support, right? How do we pull in the vendor support? Because they're not really supporting anything, because there's not that much there. So it's just like, somebody's got to, we got to find a few people to come along the journey with us. and it's gonna be slow process, but I don't know, it's been a great discussion.
Well, thank you, Chef. And sir, I feel like I can relate to your chapter. Just to throw out some numbers, I have 240 members, 170 are junior free members. So then that only leaves a small bit for a student, and then our professional members are about 40. And I feel like we keep exhausting the hamster wheel over and over again. But my selling point is that's 170 potential future employers, future employees, buyers, whatever you can sell it. I feel like I'm BSing most of the time, I'll be honest, but it's kind of, I want to put in your mind the value before you start questioning what the value is. And so I feel like I kind of in that same boat to where who's the future leaders? Because I don't seem to have the in the middle. I seem to have those that been there, done that, and so many coming up through the pipes, but yet that's so far out of their sight. So I'm hearing you on that. And I think us having a conversation, who has a phenomenal board? I'd really like to hear, other than, I'm going to say the Barringtons are a powerhouse. All right. I know Atlanta is a super awesome board, but who else has a great board? How did you get there? How do you have prospects for the next few years? Because a lot of us are like, December's coming around the corner and got nothing. I'm not sure.
Okay, great question. I was gonna wait for anybody else to jump in,
And Chef,
I'm okay
honestly,
with
I think- Sorry to cut
recusing
you
my
off.
time.
Can you hear me? So I was more so setting us up for our next meetup, not necessarily asking the question to answer now, although it's awesome that you're ready to jump in there. But I'm thinking that is
Sure.
where we kind of go to our next meetup and reach out, and those that are on the call, if you know someone that is really great at it, someone that has particular struggles, like let us know what areas could have someone say they're willing to do it, but then what happens when they don't? Like, what kind of consequences? Have you ever booted someone off your board? Just whatever we can start to get the conversation started, and then we'll identify some strong leaders to share. And that's important to us, is to include others. So that way we're not just speaking to.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it is important to get rid of your dead weight. And, Michael and I have talked about this a lot because we have some that won't even show up to a meeting, like a board meeting ever. And you're just like, well, I can't make it this time. It's like, well, I don't need people that can't make it. I need people that will function with us and help support us. And that's what we're really looking at too. So.
Yeah.
Okay, great point. Let me jump in really quick because we're reviewing our bylaws, and in our bylaws, there's a section where if you miss 3 meetings throughout a year, the president has the right to remove you from the board. I don't know if you have that same bylaw in there, the section, but it'd be really just a good consideration for whenever you do end up changing the bylaws moving forward. Because I think that's an important piece. You can make that decision.
And I certainly want to steer the conversation of how to engage and how to this and that. But again, there's always got to be the testing the limits, having something on the other side of it too. So I think a great conversation to have. Is there anything else tonight that anyone is, well, I have someone, let me reach out, let me say this, or are we ready to call it? It is 7:28 Eastern Standard Time. All right. I say we go ahead and call it. Thank you all. Thank you, chefs, for joining me here and hosting this. Again, this recording will go out for all. Please share the word, spread the word. And we will be in touch with our next virtual meetup, which will be before the national convention. So look for communication with us. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
All right.
Looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Have a great night.
Bye.